But speaking of thinking about it, opening tomorrow from Warner Brothers in theaters and on HBO Max, Hugh Jackman, Rebecca Ferguson, Tandy Newton. Reminiscence. We get a memory movie, Ryan.
Yeah.
Notoriously hard to pull off a memory movie, just like time travel, because it's kind of time travel.
Yeah, but this one has rules.
Yes, I will give you that. It does, in fact, have rules for memory. Before we get too deep, let's acknowledge the writer-director Lisa Joy, who co-created Westworld, which, if like me, you were a fan of the first season and then kind of lost it going down the road.
Like, from what I understand, the third is much better than the second.
I don't know. I didn't go there. Maybe I'll revisit it in the future. But Lisa Joy understands world building.
Absolutely.
Which is nice. So in Reminiscence, we get a world in which the ice caps have melted, the seas have rose, coastal cities have half flooded, and the world is adjusting. The film takes place mostly in Miami.
Yeah, a little bit in New Orleans.
A little bit in New Orleans, which is already underwater, and then the seas rise. I call this film eco-noir because they are clearly going for a detective noir feel with Hugh Jackman's character, even though he's not a detective.
But he does get roped into doing some procedural work with police occasionally. So there is still an element of and the central story of is about him looking for clues to find someone. So I mean, there are, whereas he may not be directly officially a detective, he is doing a lot of detective work.
But like any good noir story, we get voiceovers, a la every noir movie you've watched, a la Blade Runner.
Well, the bad version of Blade
Runner. The bad version of Blade Runner, the original version, the canon version.
That is not the canon version.
That is totally the canon version because it came first. Fuck you, Zack Snyder. That's my tangent for this episode.
It is not the canon version.
I know. But no, so Rebecca Ferguson comes to this place where Hugh Jackman and Tandy Newton run this memory facility, and they help people remember things. Either they'll help law enforcement interrogate people and extract memories of things. They'll work with victims and extract information because you remember more than you remember.
Well, essentially, it takes you literally back to the memory.
Yes.
And so you experience the memory and all of the details as if it was happening again.
And there's a huge projector type thing, so everyone on the outside gets to watch your memory.
The one thing though here that's different than in a lot of other stories is you can't alter anything.
No, it is straight up memory access.
You can see maybe additional details. You can notice additional things. You by reliving it, you can go in and there are things that you'll notice that you may not have noticed the first time. So it's like going in, knowing the memory, and knowing, I guess, I get the aspect of, what you initially remembered, you can go in and see and remember more, or see things that you didn't see, but you can't actually change anything.
Right. And they do explain that pretty well. They put a scene in there where Hugh Jackman actually gets to explain that phenomenon to Rebecca Ferguson, to explain why we and he and us as the audience gets to see this third person look at an individual's memory, which I thought was kind of clever, the way he explained why we get that point of view when they're looking in the viewer. I wish we'd have gotten more detail on that viewer, by the way, because you just kind of see its physical thing toward the end, but it's not really They don't really go into it at all, which kind of stinks.
Well,
Not the projector portion.
Yeah.
The tank and the little headset. Yeah, okay, we get that. But I would have liked to know more about the thing. And so there are rules, and I am going to point out the fact that they do break those rules in this film as well, which is part of how the plot unfolds. She comes in, Rebecca Ferguson comes in. They help her with a memory. She lost her car. She lost her keys.
Yeah.
She needed help finding her keys, which sounds like a bad bar pickup line. And as it turns out, it kind of is. She enters into a relationship with Hugh Jackman. They're together for a few months, and then she vanishes, and he can't understand why, and he becomes obsessed with trying to figure out what he missed to figure out where she is or what happened. So this film is both now his memories of his time with her, and then future even by the end of the film. So there's a lot of timeline, which is why I say it's hard to do like time travel movies, because you're trying to keep timeline straight when you're watching stuff, and where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, basically though, if Rebecca Ferguson's in it, it's probably in the past.
Right.
It's still, I mean, it's still pretty. I thought they did you're never lost, I don't think.
No, it's not Christopher Nolan convoluted in terms of the timelines, which is nice. But yeah, they mostly stick to the rules. The voiceover does get a little tiresome, but it's okay. They kind of use it as a bridge from period to period, or set piece to set piece. So it's not terribly overdone. I'm in a weird spot on this film because I wasn't super high on it going in, just because I feel like I'm critical of films that deal with memory and time travel. But the film is both not what I expected and exactly what I expected. And I know that doesn't make sense. But it is actually both of those things in my head. So I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I was gonna. By the time we get through all of the twists and turns and betrayals and lies within lies and misunderstandings. So I don't know. You saw it before I did, and you tried to make me feel a little better about it before I saw it, which helped. How did you feel about this and the way it pulled things off?
Well, I think it's an exceptional world. I love the world that's been built. The fact that because of climate change, no one goes out during the day; it's too hot, so everything now takes place at night. A lot of people are going to want to compare this directly to Blade Runner, and while there are, I guess, similarities in the sense that the noir influence, they're both somewhat near future sci-fi films. Right. Obviously, I made the joke actually that in Blade Runner the water comes from above, and in Reminiscence it comes from below.
Yeah.
But I really love the world that this takes place in, and I feel like there are aspects of the story that could have been further explored to the film's benefit. It's a 2-hour film, and I think that there's some little side journeys that it goes on that are necessary to the plot, that in a series probably couldn't have been given a little more time.
Right.
There's the villain in here, Daniel Wu's character is so over the top, and he's actually a lot of fun.
Oh, St. Joe,
but he feels a little shoehorned in, and I think if you had given him time, a little more, space to grow, he wouldn't feel as jarring. He's this very over the top. He's got the Southern draw. He's an Asian character with a really thick Southern accent. So it's a pretty unusual thing.
Yes, he anchors the New Orleans segment.
Yes,
of our film.
And there's some interesting stuff in between St. Joe and our Nick, our main character, where their relationship, that they have similarities, and similar experiences that kind of connect them in a way that you wouldn't really think that they would typically be connected, and that's interesting to me. I think that there's a lot here that I really, really, really like. And I think that I like Hugh Jackman's storyline. I like a lot of the characters that surround him. I just think the world is better than everything else. Like you kind of walk out and you think of all the possibilities of that world.
Right.
And all the things that, and they reference a bunch of stuff.
Because he's a veteran.
He's a veteran, so there's a war that's happened.
Well, there were the border wars.
Yes. So there's, and there were internment camps, and there were, there's a lot of things, little details here and there. And it doesn't bother me necessarily that those things weren't explored.
Right.
But there's a part of me that wishes that that this place was a little more like, gosh, in my head, maybe the best thing is to compare it to like a video game, where this is the version where there's no real side quests or no side stories so much. This is kind of the direct and straight, you want the multiplayer open.
I
want I want the open world where I can go and wander into some places. But what I think will get lost a little bit, because I think most people I've talked to like the world more than they like the movie. But that's still really good writing. That's still really good. So it's hard for me to, it's still surprisingly, I guess, gosh, it's hard for me to know exactly how to rate this film, because even its weakness, which is the probably the main storyline, or the story it's telling, is only weak because it takes place in such a strong place, frame. So it's and I like the Hugh Jackman storyline, and I like a lot about the Thandaway Newton's storyline, and I there's a lot of that stuff that I like. I think maybe it should have been a mini series or a TV series.
It could have been. It could have been 6. It probably could have been 6 episodes.
Take it from 2 hours, make it 3.5, and because I think there's enough story there to do that.
Yeah.
And there's enough world. You can give some of the characters a little bit of more. St. Joe could have more. Then Newton's character could have Watts, and you can kind of expand upon her personal trauma. Because I think the characters themselves are all pretty interesting. So it's just strange that it feels like it should add up to 100%, but you only get like 85. And I don't,
fair enough.
You know what I mean? I don't know exactly why that is. It just feels like, it could have been, it should add up to 100%. We lost 15% somewhere. And maybe that's just because those side parts weren't expanded upon. I love the whole them working with the police, but it's a very small section.
Right.
And I guess what I might do, because it serves the main plot very well. It ultimately is that scene is very much tied to what the main plot is. Whereas I almost think I would rather have seen a scene that does that, but isn't directly tied to the plot. Like it's just, this is something that he does on the side. This is
Right.
a thing that happens. It's turned into kind of the open world side quest rather than the main narrative.
Yeah.
And so from a writing standpoint, I know why they tied it in. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's like, logically speaking, I know why they did a lot of things that they did. And technically speaking, that's probably the right choice. But there's that part of me that just wishes, well, maybe we could waste a little time over here. We could
Right.
waste a little time here and there, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be completely economical, which is
Right.
is how this is written. And technically speaking, that's good writing. But,
Except they've written a world in which you can bend that rule.
I guess, yeah. I mean, so this film, in a lot of ways, is, I think, a film that I really, really like, and yet at the same time, there's a part of me that's kind of frustrated that it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I still think, I mean, it's not it's not hard for me to recommend it. This is in theaters and HBO Max. I might be watching that again tomorrow night. I might. I don't know. I mean, there's part of me that thinks, yeah, I think it's been a few weeks since I saw it, and there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, I think maybe if I go back in that world. And my fear, though, is that I won't see anything new. And again,
Right.
it's like going back in memories. The thing that makes it interesting in this film is being able to see the things that you missed.
Right.
And there is a small concern that I'm going to go back into the world and there's nothing new to discover. That
Right.
wasn't, they didn't see the first time around.
Well,
So,
you're going to see details of the world. I don't know that we'll see more details of this story.
yeah.
And I think you'd be happy with the first and disappointed with the second. So, and I think that's, I'd almost lay money that's your actual fear, is that not that you wouldn't enjoy seeing more stuff in the world,
But
it's
the
that you wouldn't
story
see, the story would be exactly the same, and you'd be like, which would only make it worse because you would have seen more in the world. So now the story gets smaller. I actually, I would recommend this as well, which surprises me because, like I said, I wasn't real high on it going in when I saw the first trailers.
Well, it could go wrong. This is a movie that could have easily gone.
Oh yeah, it could have been
quickly.
clearly terrible. Could have been clearly terrible, and it is not. It's a good film. I think the end is too neat and clean compared to the rest of the film. I need a darker ending in my noir.
Well, and here's the thing. I would argue that it really isn't a happy ending at all. That it is actually an ending that is the worst ending in a way.
Not for him. That's the end. He got what he wanted. He even said so.
But there's some things that are the whole movie talks about living in the past or actually creating a future.
Mm.
And that there is the danger of living in the past because there is no future for you at that point.
Right.
And so there are things that, I think that it's a cautionary tale that sometimes what you want and what you get is not necessarily the best, ending. But I actually I got to do some interviews for this one, and I asked Hugh if he thought that this was a happy or a sad ending, and he said he just thought it was poetic, and it was where it needed to go, basically.
I won't argue the use of the word poetic to describe the ending, but I only think it's a dark ending, which, like, I don't think it is, because I think the whole point of the ending, and this is probably something that everyone can just debate at the end, is like is he living the story to the halfway point, or is he living the whole story at the end of the movie? Because if he's only living half the story, then it's a happy ending. And if he's living the whole story, then it's conceivably a sadder ending.
But I would argue that he knows. It's not like when you go in the memory, you forget.
Right.
That's not what happens. It's not like you're erasing when you go back into that memory. It's not like you forget what comes next. You know what comes next, but you've picked that memory for a particular reason.
Mm-hmm.
And you, so even if he keeps going there, he can't forget where the story goes. It's like, you know, I mean, it's like you've watched a movie and you hated the movie after a certain point, so you only watch up to, you know, maybe a certain episode or a certain whatever.
Right.
You still know what came next.
Yeah.
And that still colors how, or that it will color then how you see the original, you know, half or whatever.
But if you only keep doing the first whatever, that would start to dim that which comes after, which is
Sure.
which is a downside, and that's what he's been. And that's why I argue it's too neat, it's too happy. It just feels tidy. It's a very tidy ending.
But I don't think it is tidy. I think it's actually really messy.
One of the great debates is whether or not that would be whether or not that is. I guess it depends on your point of view.
I mean, it's like, you know, to me, it's similar to, you know, AI, artificial intelligence, how everyone said that it was a happy ending, and that it was too Spielberg. But I couldn't help but think it was probably the most depressing ending in the history of cinema, because the character knows it isn't real.
Right.
And so, you know, no matter how warm and glowing and comforting you are in that moment, there's also that part of you, and again, that knows this is not, well, in AI's case, this didn't ever actually happen.
Right.
In this film, this never lasted.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that it really dives into is that you have these people who become so obsessed with the moment in time that they cease to exist. You know, they themselves become nothing.
True.
Anyway,
we can go on and on and on.
But you know what? The best thing about this is the fact that we can sit here and actually have this conversation and have these different point of views, and because a lot of films you don't get that benefit. So again, this is only more evidence that it's a pretty well written film.
Yes. There you go.
It just doesn't, you know, it's not a masterpiece, but there's just a lot in there to talk about.
Yeah, there really is. So that comes out HBO Max and in theaters tomorrow.
I would say, again, theaters, if you feel safe. There are some epic shots. The world that it takes place in, I think, is better suited to a big screen. There's some just great cinematic shots in it that, you know, look fine on television. But really, this is one of those films that was made to be seen in a theater if you feel comfortable going to a theater.
Yep. There you go. And I would also be remiss if I didn't make my obscure movie reference of the day. This world is reminiscent of the Rutger Hauer not-so-classic Split Second, if you've never seen that, which takes place in a climate-flooded London and is also a science fiction film. but there's an alien. So yeah, we'll talk about that. Maybe never. We have got big Marvel release next week that we're going to be talking about, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We do have a couple other films that we are going to try to work in, including a horror film that is coming out soon, the follow-up to Candyman. If you remember Candyman back in the day.
I got to say, there was part of me that was like, what are you,
that one.
Well,
Yes.
if you guys didn't know, I see things completely out of order sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, because you have to do the cool junket interview stuff, so you're seeing it even before everyone else.
Yeah, and then I forget that it's coming out, or it hasn't come out,
or it hasn't come out, but it is coming. But we'll be talking about that. And there are still movies coming out. We have not slid back into the abyss yet. Let's try to keep it that way, everybody. So stay safe. Go to the theaters if you feel comfortable. There are many options. There are many options if you don't feel comfortable to stream wonderful cinema at home.
But just support the arts in whatever way you bet that best suits your situation.
Indeed, that's here. So we'll be back soon with more movies to talk about for you. But until we do, I'm Mark. That's Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
And we will talk to everyone later.